It's about a meeting that was held by someone who worked at the Saudi consulate in Los Angeles. Years later, he applied for U.S. citizenship, so had to go through this interview with the FBI with two of the most prominent of the 9/11 hijackers, two guys who lived in San Diego, two cases that are very, very well known and are seen primarily, Benita, as cases the FBI and the U.S. authorities should have been on top of ahead of the hijackings. At any rate, there are meetings that this person held with them at a restaurant in San Diego, discusses those two hijackers' relationships with someone at the Saudi consulate. But again, no real smoking gun of the Saudi government's involvement. Joe Biden releasing or asking the FBI to release this document after years of demands by the victims' families. You can certainly understand why they have demanded it, and you can understand in that sense why the U.S. government is releasing it. That said, in the background, Benita, you can't escape the feeling of whether this is being done by the Biden administration, at least to some degree for political reasons because of their attitude towards the Saudi government. We've seen what Joe Biden had to say early on in his presidency about the killing of Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul, again releasing documents related to that, and again in some sense pointing the finger at Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And in the Saudi perspective, again, I think it escapes the fact that this is a different Saudi Arabia than the Saudi Arabia of 20 years ago, a Saudi Arabia that has very, very much moved away from supporting this kind of view of Islam, moved away from supporting, even indirectly, acts of terrorism of this sort. And you just can't escape the feeling how much better it would be for all sides if all of the information were out there, if this Saudi government were to recognize what the previous Saudi government may have done or may have not done in relation not only to the specifics of the 9/11 attacks, but to the broader issue of extreme Islam, and enable all of the sides to move forward. I think everybody deserves better.
Give us a sense of the time frames involved here in terms of the information being revealed. As you say, families have waited 20 years for more clarity on exactly what did happen in terms of the work behind the attacks. Talk to us about how long they will have to wait down the line.
Well, look, first of all, Joe Biden has said that over the next 6 months, he wants as many of these documents to be declassified and released as possible. So this, Benita, if that's the case, is the first of many documents that are going to be released in the next 6 months. The wider issue of the Saudi government's involvement in 9/11, of course, has been on the table since the day after the attacks themselves, certainly very prominent in the opening weeks in American media in the opening months. It has certainly been checked. The 9/11 Commission looked into this as best it could, did not find any direct evidence of Saudi government involvement or involvement by senior Saudi officials in the attacks. So it's not as if this hasn't been looked into, both by the media, by the 9/11 Commission, and by law enforcement authorities. The question is, is there information that's not out there for the public, either because the U.S. government is not putting it out there or because the Saudi government isn't putting it out there? It seems to me that both sides would be better off putting all this information out there, particularly since, Benita, I think everybody has to realize that for all of its flaws, and there may be many flaws, this Saudi government is not the one of 2001. It doesn't have the same attitude towards Wahhabi Islam.
Exclusive. New FBI documents link Saudi spy in California to 9/11 attacks. Soon after the 9/11 attacks 2 decades ago, the FBI quietly launched an investigation into a seemingly obscure Saudi Arabian government bureaucrat in Southern California. The man claimed to be nothing more than a Saudi aviation official who innocently happened to befriend 2 Islamic jihadists in the months before they carried out the 9/11 attacks. That story now appears to be false. The alleged aviation official, now really a Saudi spy, who reportedly directly to a Saudi prince who happened to be the kingdom's influential ambassador in Washington and a close friend of former President George W. Bush and other top U.S. government officials. The FBI concluded 5 years ago that there was a 50-50 chance that this Saudi spy knew ahead of time that 2 Islamists he befriended were about to join the plot to hijack American airliners and crash them into buildings in what turned out to be America's deadliest terrorist attack. But the FBI refused to go public with its findings until now. The story of the spy and the ambassador prince emerged in recent days as the centerpiece of a startling series of revelations in a newly declassified FBI report that could shed light on a perplexing mystery that has long shadowed the 9/11 investigation. That report will be linked to the bottom of the description. Questions. Did Saudi government official play a role in America's deadliest terrorist attack? If so, what sort of role? And who else was involved? While heavily redacted, the report offers the most direct link yet between the Saudi government, its secretive royal family, and the team of 19 operatives of Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda terrorist network who hijacked 4 jetliners on the morning of September 11, 2001. The terrorists crashed 2 jetliners into New York's World Trade Center, another into the Pentagon in Northern Virginia, and one which crashed into a farm field in Pennsylvania. A 510-page secret FBI report written in 2017 and declassified last week without any fanfare by the FBI or Justice Department concludes that the California-based Saudi spy Omar al-Bayoumi not only helped several 9/11 hijackers to find housing in San Diego, but that there was a 50-50 chance he had advanced knowledge of their deadly plans. For years, top FBI leaders and Justice Department officials kept this potentially explosive information secret, refusing to tell congressional investigators, the 9/11 Commission, and the more than 10,000 American citizens who had signed on to a massive federal lawsuit that seeks to find Saudi officials linking to 9/11. The findings in the FBI report are coming to light just as the Biden administration is reportedly reaching out to several oil-producing nations, including Saudi Arabia, to increase production and help curtail rising gas prices across the United States. Whether the FBI's report will impact negotiations with Saudi oil officials remains to be seen, but I'm pretty sure it will. But for decades, critics have pointed to Saudi Arabia's oil reserves and their importance to the economies of many Western nations as a reason the U.S. has not pushed harder for more information on alleged Saudi links to 9/11 and other Islamist-based terrorist attacks. Before the 9/11 attacks, the FBI report says Omar al-Bayoumi was on the payroll of Saudi Prince Bandar bin Sultan Al Saud, the kingdom's influential U.S. ambassador who was so close to the Bush administration and visited the White House so often he was nicknamed Bandar Bush. The FBI concluded that al-Bayoumi regularly passed intelligence findings to Bandar, but the report does not say whether al-Bayoumi told Bandar that he had met with 2 members of Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda terror network who had flown to California in early 2000. Those 2 men were Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Al-Bayoumi helped the 2 find an apartment in San Diego. He also introduced them to several members of a Saudi-financed mosque in Los Angeles, headed by Fahad al-Thumairy, the King Fahd Mosque. The 2 al-Qaeda operatives later made their way to northern New Jersey, where they met with other 9/11 co-conspirators, rented cars, opened bank accounts and postal boxes, exercised at a local gym, and hung out at a Macy's and other stores at Willowbrook Mall in Wayne, New Jersey. The FBI report does not say whether al-Bayoumi knew they left California, or if he did, whether he offered them advice on how to travel to New Jersey. Nor does the report say whether al-Bayoumi ever told Prince Bandar whether he knew about the 9/11 attacks before they took place. Compiled after years of outspoken concerns and criticism from 9/11 victims about a possible Saudi connection to the plot, the report and its findings were kept secret by the FBI and Justice Department officials until late last week. The report was released as an ongoing executive order by President Biden last September to declassify the FBI's trove of 9/11 investigation files. In the days leading up to the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks last September, Biden had been under intense pressure by 9/11 victims and their relatives, along with several key members of Congress, to release the FBI's secret investigative files. Some victims and relatives even threatened to stage protests or boycotts at 9/11 anniversary ceremonies if Biden showed up without ordering the FBI to open its files. Since Biden's executive order, the FBI has declassified a steady trickle of files but few of the documents offered much insight into the long-rumored Saudi link to the 9/11 plot until last week. Clear evidence of a conspiracy between bin Laden jihadists and Saudi officials had long been scarce. These latest revelations could change that, advocates say, and if nothing else, this latest report offers one of the most startling glimpses yet into the shadow world of spies and terrorists and Saudi royalty. It's exactly what we've been saying, says James Creedler, one of the lead attorneys in a lawsuit by more than 10,000 9/11 victims and relatives against the Saudi government. Saudi government officials at a high level were integral to the 9/11 attacks. The Saudi Arabian embassy in Washington and their American attorneys in the lawsuit did not respond to requests for comment. The White House did not respond either. The FBI's media office in Washington said in an email, "We have no comment on the documents." Prince Bandar, at age 73, who is now retired after moving from his U.S. ambassadorship to the head of the Saudi Intelligence Service and the Saudi National Security Council, and Omar al-Bayoumi, at age 63, both live in Saudi Arabia. They could not be reached for comment. The revelations about Bandar and al-Bayoumi drew an angry response, not just from 9/11 victims and their relatives, but from a former FBI agent who tried to sound an alarm during the summer of 2001 after he found evidence that al-Qaeda operatives had secretly entered the United States. Mark Rossini, an FBI counterterrorism expert assigned in 2001 to the CIA's Alex Station team, said this: "This latest report just shows what we have known all along, but disgustingly has taken 20 years to finally be disclosed." Rossini, who was reached at his home in Spain, where he has lived since the FBI in 2008, after pleading guilty to illegally accessing files on a case unrelated to 9/11, claims he was ordered by CIA officials and threatened with federal charges if he bucked orders and told the FBI about the presence of al-Qaeda terrorists inside the United States. Neither the CIA nor the FBI has ever explained why they did not cooperate on what now seems to be such a basic piece of an important counterterrorism investigation, and therefore may have very well prevented the 9/11 attacks. Brett Eagleson of Middletown, Connecticut, who lost his father in the collapse of the Trade Center towers, said the new evidence is a major step forward in the long legal and public relations battle to not only draw attention to Saudi Arabia's possible links to 9/11, but hold the kingdom's royal family and other officials accountable. He said, "For 20 years, we've seen a hell of a lot of smoke. I think we just found the fire." Names of sources and other identifying details in the FBI report are blacked out. Many of the 510 pages consist mostly of lines drawn through entire sentences and even paragraphs. But enough information remains to outline the seemingly strange connection between the spy, al-Bayoumi, the prince, Bandar, and two ragtag Saudi-born members, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Mihdhar and al-Hazmi were well-known al-Qaeda operatives long before they joined the team of 19 hijackers. In 2000, the CIA tracked al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi from the Middle East to an apartment in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where they met with other members of the bin Laden network. What the CIA did not know at the time was the initial plans were hatched in the meeting to hijack commercial jetliners in America and crash them into buildings, the essential ingredients of the massive attack on September 11, 2001 that caught America by surprise and transformed U.S. foreign policy. However, I think some agencies did and may very well possess the foreknowledge of the attacks, and that agency is the National Security Agency, who had monitored the phone calls of Osama bin Laden from 1992 to 1998, and an al-Qaeda communications hub where Khalid al-Mihdhar sometimes visited from 1996 to 2001 in Sana'a, Yemen. After leaving the Kuala Lumpur apartment gathering, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi flew to Bangkok, Thailand. With U.S. travel visas in hand, both caught a flight to Los Angeles not knowing the CIA agents were tailing them and that the NSA had monitored al-Hazmi's cell phone. After al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi landed in Los Angeles, they were soon met by Omar al-Bayoumi, who helped them find an apartment and introduced them to a handful of Saudis also living in Southern California. However, before that, Fahad al-Thumeri, the imam at the King Fahd Mosque, through a separate FBI investigation that was conducted by an interview with a Tunisian cab driver by Khalid Ben, where he testified that on January 13, 2000, Khalid Ben was told by Fahad al-Thumeri to pick up two Saudis at Los Angeles International Airport and drive them to him. Khalid Ben was later interviewed by the FBI, where he was given 30 photographs to point out that the two Saudis that he picked up. The two photographs were of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. The CIA had no legal authority to continue tracking the two terrorists inside the United States. By law, the CIA is strictly confined to overseas spy operations. Critics have long claimed the CIA should have called in the FBI and its domestic counterterrorism squads, but the CIA remained silent and has never explained why it did not immediately summon the FBI. However, according to Mark Rossini, he was told by Michelle Ann Casey, a CIA case officer tasked to head or lead the Yemen al-Qaeda communications hub, where she told Mark Rossini that it was not an FBI matter and that the matter belonged to the CIA because they believed the next attack would be in Southeast Asia. The information that Mark Rossini was referring to was the photographs of the U.S. visas and passports of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi that the CIA took. During the summer of 2001, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi moved to northern New Jersey, settling into the Congress Inn Motel on Route 46 in South Hackensack, another area of motels and apartments. From there, they met with other 9/11 hijackers, including the ringleader, Muhammad Atta, who lived for various periods at motels in Wayne, New Jersey. However, before that, both men had rented a room from an FBI informant who went by the codename Stan, whose real name was Abdus Sheikh. Abdus Sheikh never reported the two men to Stephen O'Brien, an FBI special agent tasked to the San Diego field office, who only knew them by their first names, Khalid and Nawaf. And a few weeks before the 9/11 attacks, the CIA finally told the FBI that al-Qaeda operatives were on the loose inside America. They withheld this information for 16 months. By then, it was too late to stop them. However, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi had disappeared with other members of the 9/11 plot. After the attacks, FBI investigators focused attention on Omar al-Bayoumi and other Saudis living in Southern California, but none were ever arrested. Al-Bayoumi left the United States and returned to Saudi Arabia not long after the 9/11 attacks. While in America, he was described in the FBI report as a co-optee of the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency, who was paid an undisclosed monthly stipend by Prince Bandar. The FBI report, however, does not say whether al-Bayoumi ever spoke directly with Prince Bandar or communicated by email. But the report also offers the glimpse on Bayoumi's role as a spy with his connection to Prince Bandar. Inside the report, quote, the information al-Bayoumi obtained on persons of interest in the Saudi community in Los Angeles and San Diego and other issues, which met certain GIP intelligence requirements, would be forwarded to Bandar. Bandar would then inform GIP of items of interest to the GIP for further investigation, vetting, or follow-up, end quote. The 9/11 Commission investigated Omar al-Bayoumi's links to al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi before releasing its best-selling report in 2004, but neither Saudi officials nor the FBI and the CIA ever spelled out to Commission investigators the extent of al-Bayoumi's work as a spy or his connection to Prince Bandar. Reached this week, the Commission's chairman, Thomas Keane, the former New Jersey governor, said his investigators never learned that al-Bayoumi was a spy. He went on to say in a telephone interview, if that's true, I'd be upset by it. The FBI said it wasn't withholding anything, and we believe them. But Keane also cautioned against jumping to conclusions about the extent of Saudi involvement in the 9/11 plot, saying, I think you have to take a look at the evidence. The FBI report also does not explain why or when it formally concluded that al-Bayoumi was, in fact, a spy. In the years after the 9/11 attacks, a number of media reports speculated that al-Bayoumi might have worked for the Saudi intelligence service, but there was no formal declaration of Bayoumi's role until now. Jerry Goldman, a New York-based attorney who represents 500 victims in the federal lawsuit against Saudi Arabia, went on the report and said, this is scary. According to the allegation in the FBI report, the Saudi ambassador is dealing with a guy who dealt with terrorists. Tim Froelich, who grew up in Little Falls, New Jersey, and escaped from the 80th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center after he was struck by Flight 175, said the latest revelations confirmed long suspicions about Saudi links to terrorism. For Froelich, who worked as an accountant for Fuji Bank, also harshly criticized the FBI for withholding the details about al-Bayoumi for so many years. The information obviously should have been laid out, and it should have been given to us a long time ago. Shyman Premley, who moved to Vermont from a home in Jersey City after escaping the 80th floor of Fuji Bank, she went on to say, knowing what we already know, how is it possible that we continue to torture their relationship with Saudi Arabia? As for the FBI and its decision to hold back for years what it knew about the spying, the prince, and the terrorists, Premley added, we feel abandoned. Well, not only you feel abandoned, but so do the rest of us and the rest of the 9/11 activists and researchers who are trying to uncover a much larger role that not only implicates the FBI and the Saudis, but also to the Israelis and the NSA.